Hello, everybody, and welcome to Life After Death and Beyond with me. I'm James Van Prague, and my good friend Kelly White. Hello, Kelly.
Hi, James. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
And I love that we're dressed the same today.
Yeah. So if you're not seeing this, you're just hearing it. Kelly and I never know what each other's going to wear, and we just happen to sometimes wear the same. So tonight we're wearing, would you call it a camel?
Copper, kind of.
Copper.
I mean, I don't know. This happens so often, James.
It's so weird. And we're like the kind of blue, certain hues of blue, not your normal blue.
Yes.
It's just really interesting. So we're going with the flow, Kelly.
Yes, we are. And tonight is really going to be a great show.
Really a great show. A friend of mine for many, many, many years. And it's like old home week. I'll tell you, we've known it for a long, long time. And Dannion Brinkley is one of the foremost in your experiences. Kelly, I know you have Dannion's bio, yeah?
I have his bio, Danny, and I was really lucky. He was on my show years and years ago, and I was just fascinated by his story. But let me tell you a little bit about Dannion Brinkley. In 1975, Dannion was struck by lightning while using a hard-wired telephone. He was clinically dead for 28 minutes before returning to a body that had been severely electrocuted and damaged, having been thrown into the air by the lightning's force. What followed there was a journey that took him around the world to the halls of Congress, the pyramids of Egypt, Machu Picchu, and the bedside of thousands of veterans in VA hospice programs. He also faced numerous critical health challenges, providing him with a firsthand perspective on the state of the healthcare system. His near-death experiences, the visions he received, and how he has moved forward are detailed in 3 international best-selling books. His work, beginning in the 1980s with Dr. Raymond Moody, has spanned a vast body of knowledge and outreach, including hundreds of radio and television shows, a made-for-TV movie, and over 40 years of developing a training program for hospice volunteers within the U.S. veterans healthcare system. His first book, Saved by the Light, is an international and New York Times bestseller. All of these efforts, nearly half a century of work following his lightning injury, have been driven by Dannion's commitment to the instructions he received from the spiritual beings of light during his near-death experience. And this brings us to 2024 and the launch of the Brinkley Center, which we will talk about.
Yes. And Dannion is really, I would say, a pioneer in the NDE, bringing it to the public and the public consciousness, because before Dannion, it wasn't really talked about. And there were books that I remember. So Dannion Brinkley, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure. And thank you both. Thank you both.
So happy to have you on tonight.
Good to see you again.
The same. Because anytime you say life, death, and beyond, I'm in.
Well, I remember the reason I said, "Hey, buddy," because every time I saw your first words, were, "Hey, buddy," and that's how I remember.
It was always, but we were in this. We were in the same business, dispelling the fear of death because it does not happen. Exactly. And once a person gets a grip on, there's 2 things that comes from the near-death experience that are concrete realities. Number 1, you do not die. It will not happen. Number 2, 95% of all near-deathers make this statement: I lifted out of my body and I looked at it lying below on the floor, in the car, in the bed, wherever it was. That means that you are not that body. So the 2 things that are established based on the millions of near-death experiences because of cardiopulmonary resuscitation techniques and the advancements of science in electricity and chemistry, we keep coming back. If that means we don't die, and that means that you are not that physical body, that is the message of what the near-death experience teaches you. And the moment people try to wrap their minds around it outside of religions and institutions and governments, they all of a sudden see clearly who they are, which is now for sure they don't.
Wow.
I'll add one more thing. You are a great, powerful, and mighty spiritual being with dignity, direction, and purpose. Great, powerful, and mighty are earned positions as a spiritual being. So it means there's only a couple of things that can ever go wrong in your life. If you're a great, powerful, and mighty spiritual being with dignity, direction, and purpose, the only thing that can ever go wrong is you allow something to affect your dignity, which skews your direction and your purpose. And the number one thing that people allow to affect their dignity is their personal opinion of themselves. And what is construct as a construct of reality as presented to us from a physical point of view, or a materialistically driven point of view that pulls you outside of yourself instead of focusing within yourself in that person that observed yourself while you were dead. Why can't living people do the same thing?
It's true. It's true.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're there now. You know, James. Well, but you know, James, you know the boxes of knowledge. You know that the being 1975, I was struck by lightning. I ran into these beings of light. I describe it in Saved by the Light.
Tell us about that experience.
Well, the biggest thing about
thousands of times, but we want to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, but the millions of times, James, about all of this is, look, one day I never believed any of this. I was like, jackass. You know, I thought tough guy was the way you went, football, sports, Marine Corps, you know, and I worked a lot of projects, quote unquote, but I didn't have any belief in any of this. I didn't care. I'm from South Carolina. Everybody goes to hell in South Carolina. You know, I already knew where I was going, and I'd been hearing it since I was 5 years old. You're going to hell, boy. Okay, so I don't have any problems about any of that. And then one day I'm struck by lightning, and I'm dead for 28 minutes. I'm completely paralyzed for 7 days, partially paralyzed for 7 months, and it took me 2 years to learn to walk and feed myself. But in the course of this, because of the lightning, I've had to have open heart surgery, brain surgery, and open heart surgery because of the damage done.
Oh, wow. So
I have to kill myself every 10 or 15 years just to keep from getting bored. So what happened was I went through the standard things that people go through, but it's like you said, James, remember, it didn't have a name. Right. When this happened to me, it did not have a name. There wasn't Raymond Moody, and you're right. I forced Raymond Moody into the mainstream. I made him get out and talk about this, because there are a lot of people who have this experience that is so overwhelming. Mm-hmm. They talk to their minister. The minister tells them to talk to their psychologist or psychiatrist. They talk, or their preacher, and the preacher tells them to talk to their psychiatrist. Then the psychiatrist tells them to go back and talk to their minister and their doctor, and they never find resolution. So I made Raymond, and he'll bitch and complain, but I made him do it because people needed to know this. And when Raymond burned out on me in the 90s, when he was burning out because he could see the boxes of knowledge, which I'll get to in a second, was coming true. All this stuff that I saw when I was dead was coming true. Wow. And as it was coming true, I decided that somebody had to defend all those people out there that was having this experience and had nowhere to turn. And I decided it was me. And so I wrote with Paul Perry, I wrote Saved by the Light. I didn't know it was going to become a rock opera, okay? But my big crisis, James and Kelly, was this. When I came through the tunnel and had my life review, which is the most important thing that will ever happen from the near-death experience, what is the takeaway? The takeaway is this. You will see your entire life pass before you in a 360-degree panorama. You've missed nothing. You will watch it from a second-person point of view as though you were your own best friend. Because if it was something dumb you did, it's still your best friend telling you. Or if it's something good you did, it's your best friend telling you, and it doesn't have an ego. It just has love in it. And then you're going to literally become every person that you ever encounter. And you're going to feel the direct results of your interaction with you and that person. Nobody gets away with anything. The universe is fair and just, no matter what you think. The only other thing I'll add to that is if anybody was supposed to go to hell in 1975 in September, it would have been me.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Yeah, I don't have no problems about it, okay? So now we come to this part. After that panoramic life review, I went to this place that I could only describe as crystal cities. There's no other way. It's like driving into Denver on a cold summer night with all the mountains lit up. Each one was a crystal city, and the sun radiated through the fog that's so beautiful and so colorful, like the aurora borealis, and it's just so beautiful. And I go inside, and there's these 13 beings. There were 12 in front of me and one to my right. I didn't understand the sacred number of 12 in 1975, 76, and 77. I didn't understand it. And I now understand so much of the numerical symbology because I'm 50 years later. And I have lived this, but I saw what became the future, 50 years of American history that ends, world history, that ends this next year. We got 15, 16 months. And all of the things that I saw in these boxes of knowledge will have come true or not come true. Okay. So when I got in trouble with the publishers, I was not going to not put the boxes of knowledge in the book. And they were scared because it was about Russia and about Israel and about world events and World War III and what was going to happen and the collapse of the Soviet Union and Chernobyl and all the nuclear issues. Okay, all that stuff was written about, even down to the pandemic. I described it in detail. And then I described what had to be in place once the pandemic occurred. I describe it in detail. Anybody who reads Saved by the Light, they can read and see. But the point for me, James and Kelly, was this. Listen, publisher. I said, if all this stuff comes true, to me, it means there's a life after death. And that's what I'm here to try to prove. And not that I used to call that prophecy Dannion thing Nostradanian, because I thought that was stupid. You know, I'm not the prophet. I'm not the seer. I just had a good memory. Okay. I wrote this down in 1977, and Paul and I put it in a book in 1993.
Wow.
It was published in 94. Everything has come true.
Wow.
So I'm in the final stages of the execution of the plan because I have followed it. And what people don't understand is when you come to becoming every person that you ever encounter and you feel the direct results of your interaction, you don't get away with anything. Mm-hmm. The joy or the harm or the sadness you brought them. True. But there comes a place, and this is a Dannion way of saying it, where you'll judge yourself. If God couldn't come today and God sent you in the life you just reviewed, what difference did you and God make? Okay, that's the question. Everybody sees their life, and then they ask themselves that question, and that's going to be the measure. That's the measure. Well, I knew that nobody died, and I knew there was a life after death, and I knew everything that everybody had ever told me about it was a liar or was misinformed because it happened to me. Don't try to tell me I was dead, okay? Not maybe I was dead, and that wasn't a near-death experience. That was a death experience. Patient unconscious, patient not breathing, no EKG is what it says on the emergency room paperwork. Patient unconscious, patient not breathing, no EKG. What does that tell you? Okay, that's what it said. So subsequently in this system, every so often they bring me back. Every so often. And when I say that, people say, well, that sounds kind of woo-woo-ish. Okay, we'll try this. I was struck by lightning on September 17th at 7:05 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon during a thunderstorm. That's spiritual. On September 17th at 7:05 a.m. in 1997 on a Wednesday morning during a thunderstorm. I had brain surgery.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
22 years and 12 hours to the second.
Wow. Wow.
Okay, so when people, but James, I never tell people this stuff.
Right.
I always try to be the dead guy. I've been a hospice volunteer for 47 years because that's where I can make the most difference. I built the largest end-of-life care volunteer program for dying veterans in American history, and I co-wrote the standard end-of-life care model for veterans today that's used in the VA. When I came to the VA, it did not have a hospice or a palliative care program.
Wow.
Today, I'm 50% of that program, and I'm the standardized model of what the Twilight Brigade was. Because if God couldn't come today and God sent me in the life I just reviewed, what the difference did me and God make? We made this difference. I made transition for a veteran better than I found it because I am a former Marine. And that's as tight as I can stick to it. Well, where the world is right now is world war. You sit on the precipice where the general tonight, the head admiral of NATO, is telling the European Union to go on a war supply system. It is armies you think that wins wars. It's ammunition, products, food, supplies that fuels that army. That was this afternoon. So for everybody, tonight is a reality check. It's a reality check for all of us. We sit at the precipice of a world war. And when you start and think like that, you realize I wrote about all of this 1977. I wrote it all down. So what brings me is to the final position. My life has been healthcare, and it's mostly palliative and end-of-life care, because there is where I feel spiritually I can make the greatest difference. If I'm going to see my entire life pass before me in a 360-degree panorama, and I'm going to watch it from a second-person point of view, and I'm going to become every person that I can ever encounter and feel the direct results of my interaction between me and that person, where else would I want to be knowing what I know than at the bedside that someone is, when I have a life review, that when that person who I'm there sitting with, as they make their transition, what they look up in their eyes and they see in me is what I have seen in my life review. Wow. So I already know the goal. I know how you win, and I know what this is. I understand it. So my job is the Dannion.com. I've always known my name, but I've never used it to the point where I was just going to step up to the plate and fulfill the final vision. Do the things that I wrote about in Saved by the Light that all happened in 1995 and fulfill the vision. So I went after to create the energetic reality of who we are as spiritual beings. I deal with the ethereal self. You have a physical, you have a mental, you have an emotional, you have an ethereal, and then you move into esoteric or spiritual realities. Now they're varied and wide. A lot of what you do, James, comes from that level of consciousness, where the ethereal into the spiritual position and has a diverse systems. It's based on energetic frequency and the length of that wave, scalar. But mine is to take the ethereal self and understand that you're an electrical system. And I can separate you from that body. I can separate you from that body where you observe it using a field, a zero field, but it's really a field that allows you to escape it. And that you can look down at it and see that you are not that. I look after grieving people and people who are gone through loss and people who are suicidal. These are people based on the reason why you're suicidal. A lot of people have a reason to be suicidal. Okay, you have a reason, but then a lot of times there's no reason. And I specialize in veterans. Everybody knows I'm simplified, do or die, United States Marine Corps, hoorah, get some. But I stay right there, and I see that knowing that you can be separated from yourself as a point of clarity. What goals do you think could be achieved if you knew you were not that physical, mental, emotional self? People think emotions are something that's ethereal or spiritual. That's nonsense. Mm-hmm. Emotion is an attitude or an opinion based on how much you like something or how much you don't like something. You can laugh and you can cry about the same emotion will make you laugh or it'll make you cry. Well, what's it predicated on? What you were thinking about it and how much you thought about it, how much you liked it or didn't like it. End of story. That's reality. So then there's your ethereal self. That self that senses, that communes, that holds in place the nature of to desire to be great. Not to dare any of that, but to desire. To look up the definition of the word desire. And we've sexualized it like we do everything because we have to be physical in our mindsets. But to desire be a certain state of being. To desire that. And to be able to take a point and separate your realities so that you can observe them. What all near-deathers have. They know they're not that body. They know it. And you can never convince them that they are, no matter what you do. You know, I always say, yeah, I've been dead so many times, it's like a comedy routine. You know? So when you get to talk about death and dying, this water's long and deep.
I'm curious, Danny. I'm curious with you when you've had the 3 near-death experience, 3 dead experiences. Was each one deeper than the next? Did you go to different areas?
Yeah, all of them are learning processes. They expand my. I'm not the smartest person, so you have to tell me a lot of times, you know, and so knowing that you have to explain it to me. You know, you had to explain it like when I first saw the vision and I lived in analog, I could not figure out how some beings of light in heaven or wherever it was I was could do what needed to be achieved with analog. Mm-hmm. You cannot hold a constant frequency. Mm-hmm. You cannot handle the sine wave. You cannot do so many things in analog. And I had to wait for digital. I knew digital was coming, but I had to wait 10 years for it. Okay, so everything has been a learning about the nature of the ethereal self, a nature that still can be measured in what we call physical reality. Because once you hit the spiritual realm, we have no technique and no device except the human heart and the human mind capable of detecting those frequencies. There are no devices capable of detecting them. So based on quantum or a science, it just becomes a theory. Doesn't matter whether it's true or not. It's just a theory because it doesn't operate in mainstream physical reality, just like scalar wave or radionics, those kinds of esoteric things, remote viewing. These things move into the ethereal levels of perception, but they still exist. The point where I was in this, James, is this. Hey, everybody, we got to grow up or we'll be in a world war. Yeah. And you better call your congressman and you better call your senator and you better call your congressman. You better call them tomorrow and tell them you're against it. Yeah. Because it is happening. You know, I'm militarily driven. You know my background, James. Mm-hmm. But I understand how a war works. I know the mechanisms.
And before you go into that, I want to ask you a quick question about your thing while I remember it. So the boxes of knowledge that you could see the future events, let's say things that would happen. What about your own life, your personal life? Did you see personal events for you that have happened that you had to go through maybe with destiny points? Did that occur also or no? Or that you remember?
Well, I didn't know they were going to have to kill me when I agreed to it to come back the first time. I didn't know it'd have to be all the symbology of the spiritual identity. Okay, it has to be mental, physical, emotional. Struck by lightning. How spiritual or ethereal is that? Open heart surgery, brain surgery, open heart surgery. That's an attack on every level of consciousness perceivable in every esoteric realm. Yeah. Okay, that's what it is. I didn't really get that part of the deal. I still would have made it, but I don't think I would have second guessed it, because it has destroyed my life. It has driven me over and over into such stuff that it's just unimaginable, but I know I'm right.
And you had to be forced to listen to your heart and follow your heart, not your head.
I'm not quite that way. I mean, I'm being honest.
And action, get down. Compassion.
Okay, but watch this. Watch this. There are people who came to become volunteers,
right?
Because that was where they were, their hearts, and they wanted to learn how to be at the bedside and learn how to be able to deal with their own mortality, but also in the course of be able to help somebody. That's them. I am analytical. My mind analyzes information and it pays attention. Okay. I understand the process to go from this world to the next. And I know it in intimate detail of what a person needs going from this world to the next. I know exactly what they need, exactly how they do it. I can listen to the tone and sound in their voice when they're talking to me, and I know where they are. I'm perceptive of who they are, what they're going through, where the emotional structures are. I can calculate ethereally where the physical pain comes from, like Louise Hay used to do. I can measure that, and then I can talk to them about structuring closure. But it's not, just being honest, James, it's not that I'm all that hard. It's I measure the panoramic life review. And how do you construct a reality knowing that you're not going to die and that you're a great, powerful, and mighty spiritual being with dignity, direction, and purpose? And once a person does that, the level of their consciousness elevates and they become aware of a reality that exists around them that's always been there. They're just not allowed to access it because they live in the confines of a delusional illusion. And it's basically a lie, and you have to lie to yourself to even believe it. You have to lie to believe you think that the world all three of us were born in is still here today. It is gone. And we're witnessing the birth of a new world and a new age. This is plain as the age of Aquarius says, and this is plain as the Mayan calendar says. This is plain as all of it says. Here we are. I think it's exciting that I made it this far. And what I think is the greatest part is I am close to fulfilling this final vision. You know, that I can create a place based on the person's intentions of why they want to experience the program. I can help them see their spiritual identity. I prefer to be dealing with grief trauma because grief is a monster. Right. It's a monster. It destroys. And I believe that evil has the greatest power it can be expressed in end-of-life care, as it destroys families, as it turns people who have loved themselves their whole life against each other because of religion or institutions or some kind of government ID. If your sister voted for Trump, don't go to her when she's dying. Or if you voted for Biden, then don't go to see your sister as she's dying. Pandemic. You cannot go and be with the person that's about to transition. Don't tell me that that's not evil. Don't even try to tell me. And the other thing, the liquor store can stay open, but the church has to close. Wait a minute. That was the rules of the pandemic.
It's true.
You can't get a bunch of people, cut them off from alcohol and think like somebody smoking cigarettes. I don't know whether you planning it right or you caring about health care, but why would you do that if you didn't need to keep that crowd calm? Because what happens is when a junkie runs out or an alcoholic runs out, you better be careful.
True.
Okay. It's not hard for me to see the structure of how all that was planned. You know, when you just live in everyday psychological warfare, you see how it is.
Yeah.
But my point is this. I didn't care, James. I didn't really care. I've always been honest and straight up about what I think and who I am. And I give it everything that I could possibly give to make the difference of what I think that what I say in those books and what I write about and been talking about for 40 years, that I say that you're not going to die. It will never happen. And you are not this body. You are not it. Because we know when people start talking about Jesus and God, well, here's the crisis with that. I've been over there, okay, a bunch of times. You know, I got like my ticket punched.
Yeah, I suppose so.
So when people say, did you see Jesus? No. But I felt its presence.
I love that. Yeah.
Because watch, a human being has to personify everything so its ego can compare itself to it. There is no real reason for the second coming, because love thy neighbor as thyself and do unto others as you would have others do unto you was the Christ consciousness. And let all agreements be a covenant that is good for both parties. Okay, there is the trap for humanity, because that's what the teachings were all about. So the second coming was that message and how you adhere to it, instead of to personify it into a person. You identify the person like the photograph, but you see what they did and you feel what they did. And once you enter that level, the ethereal self kicks in. I have accesses, James, to levels of consciousness. And you know me, I can do all that stuff. I'm pretty psychic, you know, I'm all that kind of stuff, but it's measured. I can determine everybody's voice is their reality. How you measure yourself in the heavens and into the as many of the places that I've been, of the 4 places and on the other side that I've seen, the sound of your voice and the cadence of your voice is who you are. Mm. All that other stuff is gibberish, utter nonsense. Part of the process of existing within this framework for the period of time that you existed in it. There are rules. Here's the biggest lie. You ready for the biggest lie?
Sure.
Am I boring you guys?
Not at all.
No, not at all.
Fascinated.
Well, it's just that I've known James Van Prague and I love him. And I appreciate what he does. And we've had a parallel career. Yeah. Hollywood, we had a parallel career. He created half those shows and consulted on them. So truth came out in a way, and I let him make a movie about me, because any way that I could get the message out, exactly. Any way I could give you a chance to think that you're not going to die, then that's what I was willing to do. I didn't care about all that. I mean, I think that stuff is boring. And anybody that's ever been on a movie set or a TV set, got to buy a tube of Preparation H before you leave after the 3rd day. It's 13 hours of utter boredom.
It's true. So
for
true.
2 minutes of a shoot, then you sit back down.
It's so true. So true.
I mean, we lived in it. So here's the big lie.
We had the same publisher too for a while.
Yeah.
Several times, actually, several different publishers.
Couple of times. Yeah. And just so many parallels. That's why I was not going to not do the show. Daniel, I mean, I'm honoring you. I appreciate you. And Kelly, I appreciate you making him do this, because somebody has to make him.
Oh, be quiet. Let me ask you. So remember when we did The Other Side?
Oh, God. We were kids. I mean, we were in our 40s. We were like kids.
Yeah. It was a long time before, I think it was. Yeah. It was with Will Miller. It was the first kind of paranormal show that was out there way before its time. But you were one of the people on there. You were more regular on there like I was.
Yeah. Yeah, but you know, we were any way we could make a difference. Always you do the same thing I do. There's life after death, and grief is a monster. But let me tell you the trap. When you come here, you have to accept the big lie. And you ingrain it, that hunger and yearning in every human being is they know that the big lie is there. They just don't know how to identify it. Okay, that's that anxiety and anguish in people. Okay, well, here's what it is. In the spiritual world, there's no such thing as helplessness. And there's no such thing as loneliness. This is utter nonsense. You are never helpless and never alone. It never happens. But over here, you are helpless when you're born and when you leave, and you're alone based on your opinion of yourself, predicated on what you think other people think about you. And that structures loneliness.
Is that a trap, Dannion? That's a trap.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. If you're not going to live what you've been taught and what you know better than to do.
Right. Right.
Okay. Then there's where confusion sets it. But the trap is that how could it be true? Anything that you tell me about God and heaven and all those things, and you're going to be reunited with your family and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Well, how can you be afraid of facing that if you really believe it, and though you profess to say it and that you really believe it? How can you profess to say that? That's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. So, you know? Yeah. It's like remember in the early days, this woman, she said, you remember those times when, God, James, when we were out there beating those bushes, when everybody wanted to die and everybody wanted to go to hell, and, you know, and there was no such thing. And the doctors, it's the doctor's fault. We keep coming back, so they can't blame anybody. And then they come with all those rationales for what you're doing, a hot read and a cold read. And there was some of those out there.
Yeah.
But I've watched you. You know, and I don't mean to be arrogant, but I will be. It's hard to get past me. You got to be doing what you're doing, or I will confront you about it. I'm not afraid of any of that, you know. I'm not afraid. So in my life, when what we were talking about was this, I am never helpless and alone. I've been broken many a time, but I never, no matter what they threw at me, I was never going to give up what I knew to be reality. And now it's come true. So what I want to do is people go to Dannion.com and help me. Just like I built the Twilight Brigade. Like somebody asked me, they said, Dannion, let me ask you something. Why don't you go to Elon Musk or somebody like that, just tell them to give you the money? I said, well, let me tell you something. That's not what built the Twilight Brigade, Compassion in Action. That's not what built it. It was 20,000 people. They came and joined and became a part and contributed. And there were donors. There were people who donated. But everybody was vested in it. That means everybody's vested in its success. Okay? Because once you are part of something that's really doing the same crap I've been talking for 50 years, where do you think I'm going to go? I mean, what? I'm going to make it happen. Why? That would be the final point where I could reinforce that there's a life after death. If I can get you out of your body and you follow those rules and it happens, then if that's going to be the transforming state for you, you don't have to worry about whether I know how to do it or not. Anybody who's really funny, when Raymond and I, this is like the 90s, James, right? You know, when I didn't care. I hadn't written Saved by the Light then. I didn't care. You know, I was still just crazy Dannion. So we were in New York doing the Joan Rivers show.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah. What a typical New York bitch. Yeah. I mean, but she was wonderful. I mean, you know, she's wonderful. So that was when it was live and you'd go to commercial breaks, like, and you'd come back. So I was watching her. She was just, whoever producer had put that segment together, right? She just watching her. And she just is doing it because the producer brought the segment to her. Right. You know, she didn't care. She asked the same old stupid questions, you know, and Raymond and I were doing the John Dee's Theater of the Mind. We were putting the center together. That's when he burned out on me. Okay. But we were putting the center program together. And I was sitting there, and, you know, I'm being me and Joan and George Ritchie, you know, we're the early people, early people. I mean, I was right there in Raymond's living room when there was 6 of us. And Raymond hadn't even finished Life After Life then. We were all sitting there trying to figure out how to do it. And I said, you know, Joan, I called her Miss Rivers. I said, you know, Miss Rivers, it's easy to talk crap up here in New York. I said, but don't you bring your ass down to Alabama? Well, you know how I am. I get to the point. I'm not messing with all that. And I said, you know, everybody can sit up here and talk it. Come on down. Well, she came down. And anybody can go on YouTube and punch up Dannion Brinkley and Joan Rivers.
Wow.
And watch what she said happened when she lifted out of her body, looked down at her body, observing it, crying like a little baby. She goes from Raymond's to California. She sees her daughter in the shower. She sees what her daughter had laid out on the bed to put on. And she came back. And when she came out of that room, she was crying and so calm. And she didn't even know, you wouldn't even know it was Joan Rivers. She can't even talk. And she sat down and started telling Raymond this story about that. And I said, Joan, you see that black thing next to you? She looked down and I said, they call that a telephone. Why don't you call Melissa? So right on camera, she calls Melissa. Melissa, what were you doing 25 minutes ago? I was taking a shower. What are you going to wear today? Well, Mom, they're both fashionistas. Well, Mom, you know that daisy belt that you bought me and that yellow top that you bought me and the skirt, okay, that I got and the shoes. And she described in detail as though it was Joan Rivers. It was Melissa was describing it as if she was Joan Rivers, using the same phraseology.
Wow. Yeah.
So anybody can go on YouTube and look that up. That was 91.
I remember, as you're speaking about it, I'm remembering this. It's coming back to me. I remember that was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you understand
as well.
Well, because that's all I've been doing, James. You know, I've paid a price for it, but you know what? I'm happy. And I'm struggling to make this work, but it's the last thing that I was obligated to do. Okay. And that I obligated myself 50 years ago. And I have followed the boxes of knowledge. Anybody can go get a copy and read it and see. You know, that book is millions and millions. It's in 25 countries, in 21 languages. It's all over the world. And people say, I said, well, let me ask you something. Can you count? If that answer is yes, and can you read English? And if you can do those two things, I got you. You know, I wrote this stuff down in 1977. You're funny. You know? Okay, so same thing with Joan Rivers.
Dannion, tell us a little bit about your center, which you just opened in September, right? The Brinkley Center.
Well, the deal was this. Between this pandemic and the next one, because they would structure 2 or 3 of them. Wow. You had, well, it's beings of light, James. It isn't Dannion. You've never heard me no one's ever heard me take credit for it. That's never happened. That's not me. And I said, look, between the two, there has to be a place that helps people to ground the fact that they are electrical beings. You are an electrical being. You walk on a 7.82 hertz, the Schumann resonance of the earth. 7.82, it's called grounding. Yep. The same as what your pH is. Yep. And that's a field you walk in. The air you breathe is electrical. It's an atmosphere, a stratosphere, and an ionosphere, and 2 subspheres. So it's electrical. Nothing happens in your body until the chemistry turns into electricity. No drug works until it's electrical. Now, this is science. This isn't maybe I know what I'm talking about. This is, if you own a cell phone, I can prove you are an electrical being. If you own a cell phone, I can prove you're an electrical being. Because look how close people are to their cell phones. And once you start looking at gamma and frequencies and how it transmits information and how it does all that, then you start to look and see how fast your brain operates electrochemically, okay, equal to quantum computing. There's no quantum computer that can out-crunch you, okay? And then you look at the types of vaccines that are coming out, you're going to be transhuman. You're going to be integrated into circuitry. It's going to happen. Everybody's talking about it. I mean, it's not something new, everybody. This is the reality of where we're going. We're locked to our phones, and then you plant the phone in you. Then you, just like what Elon doing, you put a chip in, increases your speed. You have a drug that you take. You take a machine, and you put it in your system. It's nanoparticulated. It releases the drug on time at a specific amount so that you know you're taking your medicine, and it will send that signal back to the computer, and it'll send that signal back to the computer that says that you took your medicine and it was properly applied. And they'll use it on Alzheimer's patients and dementia patients and people trying to keep up with their medicine so that they know they're taking their proper medicine, and it creates a sense of responsibility on the caregiver. I've been here 50 years. I've been dead so many times. Don't even try to run it on me. You know, people are funny. I've been with 2,017 people going from this world to the next, and 358 taking their last breath. And I've been a hospice volunteer for 47 years.
Yeah.
You're an electrical being, a great, powerful, and mighty one with dignity, direction, and purpose. We'll either act like we are, or we be in a world war.
It's very true. It's very true.
And it'll be tomorrow.
Yeah.
It'll be tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. That's the point. And so I guess I take a certain amount of joy, and I hate that they were right, that the beings were right. But the thing it was predicated on was this. If you keep doing the same thing you've been doing, this is after Vietnam, 75, you're going to find yourself in these situations, the probable possibilities. So everything I saw came true. And the things that I couldn't find, okay, like the think about this, I call it the environmental religion. Climate change. I call it the environmental religion because in 1975, I didn't have a series of names for what was going to become a religion. Environmentalism is now, climate change is a religion. It's about everybody's become a pagan again. We're all worshiping the earth. We're all a bunch of pagans. You know, when the Pope decided to bless climate change, he'd gone back to becoming a pagan. I think that's funny, you know. So I want people to come and donate and support and get involved in getting a grip on who you really are. Because as much as I hate to say it, the clock is ticking.
It's true. It's true.
And anywhere you go, and ever how deep you stick your head in the sand, there's a lot of places that sand will crystallize.
That's true.
And I want us to win.
Yeah,
you're not going to die. So if you're not going to die, then what are you living for?
Kelly, you have a question for Dannion before we close?
Well, what is the best way for people to reach out to you? Is it through the Brinkley Center?
This Dannion.com.
Dannion.com. Okay.
And I ask everybody to do this.
There it is.
Please take your trace minerals. I use trace mineral research. Nobody pays me, but this is the one I use. The body does three things: compound, enzyme, and solution reactions. It needs trace minerals to achieve that goal. And if you take your trace minerals on time, you will, as the levels of consciousness are shifting and changing as this age is being born, you need trace minerals to be able to uplift your consciousness and hold that elevated position as the body's taking care of itself, as the neutrino bombardment that's coming to affect us. The final days of 2025.
And what trace minerals do you recommend?
I use trace mineral research.
Trace mineral research, okay.
I get it on Apple. I get it on Amazon. It comes from the Great Salt Lake, so it has enough electrolytes because it's the Salt Lake. It has enough electrolytes in it. It's cheap. I carry pills on the road, but I like the drops in apple juice. Yeah. You know, because and I have a whole routine. You know, the thing that James, that I have raised myself from the dead. My brother has a picture of me dead. And I always tell people, you want to know what PTSD is? Go talk to my brother and sister about how many times they've had to come tell me goodbye. And when this last time when they came out and they told Catherine and my brother and sister that I was gone, my brother went in there and took a picture and I waved at him.
Wow.
So in the time that she went outside and they already declared me again, I resuscitated. The little nurse in there, he had worked 12 hours. He said something came to him and told him this guy must live. And he worked 2 more hours to get me to 60/42. okay, 60/42. And then he left and came back for another 12-hour shift. So I got to see him over the next 2 or 3 days.
Wow.
So, and I need people to take care of themselves. And I need them to understand, whether they like it or not, they're about to discover they're electrical, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Right.
You will be able, the only way you can describe what's getting ready to come as medical delivery systems is that you're electrical. And they will explain it to you that way.
Well, thank you, Dannion. I really appreciate your
Really interesting. Thank you so much.
Soul wisdom with us.
Well, have me back again. Let's have some fun. I'll try to be funny, but what can I tell you?
2025, we'll have you back. Promise.
All right, I love you guys.
Love you, Dannion. Thank you.
All right, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And
love you guys.
Thank you. And Kelly, thank you. And
thank you, James. And stay on with us, Dannion. Stay on with us.
Okay. Bye, everyone.